Today we're going to be learning Ketubot Daf Mem Zayin. This week's learning is sponsored by Mark Goldstein in honor of his wife Rina on the occasion of their 40th anniversary. Mazel tov. We're going to start from the very bottom, Zakai b'mitziata, the bottom of Mem Vav Amud Bet. The father, again, we're talking about what rights the father has to his daughter's property or possessions or whatever it might be. So one of the things is he gets anything that she finds. So the Gemara explains, Mishum Eva. This is because of Eva. Okay, it might cause hatred. Okay, hatred's a very strong word. Or animosity, maybe you would say. So the concern is that the father might get upset with the daughter. Why would he get upset? Well, if the father, okay, Rashi says something very interesting, which you probably might have picked up on in the Mishnah. We said that the husband has to provide the woman with mizonot, with food, but the father does not. However, generally a father does provide his daughter in general with mizonot, even though he's not obligated to. So therefore, if he's giving her food and then she doesn't give him her lost items, then he'll be upset with her. What do you mean? I've been giving you food all this time and you're not giving me things that you found that are, probably valuable and all that. Again, it's very hard to understand this kind of a world where this goes on, but the Gemara is concerned that he basically is taking care of her, and maybe he'll say, Rashi says, below Zayin Latu. He might just say, you know what, I'm not going to give you food anymore. Okay. Again, in a sense, they're trying to protect the daughter really from a possibility that the father will cut her off from getting food. So because of that, since there is no legal obligation, they want to make sure the father continues to do that so that the daughter survives. Why they don't institute that the father has to give her his own note, right? It could be they just assumed that this was the basic. You don't need a law to say what's obvious. But maybe yes, maybe no. Anyway, okay. Maseyadeh minama. How do we know that her salary goes to her father? So this we saw. Da'amar Rav Huna Marav. Minayin shemaseh habat la'av shenemal kim kol risha bito la'ama. How do we know that the salary of the daughter goes to the father? Because it says if a father sells his daughter into slavery, right, to be a servant. So because of the juxtaposition, we've seen this before between the daughter and the ama, the maidservant in that pasuk. Therefore, we say that we're going to compare them. Just like a maidservant, all of her salary goes to her master. Likewise, the daughter, all of her salary will go to her father. Maybe this is only though for a ktana, for a minor, because the ktana can, because he can sell her. In other words, while she's a ktana, she can be sold into slavery. So therefore, the whole verse in which we're learning it from is referring specifically to a ktana, a minor. Therefore, maybe this only applies to a minor. But that 6 month in-between period, we say her maaseh yadayim go to the father, her salary. But when she's a bogeret, it doesn't anymore. But when she's a na'ara, when she's still 12 and 6 months, then since he can't sell her, maaseh yadayim. Maybe, in other words, if the whole thing is learned out from this verse about the maidservant, maybe it only applies when the maidservant, when it's relevant, the maidservant issue. So therefore, we'd say, in the case of an na'ara, since he can't sell her, then this pasuk doesn't apply in that case, and therefore maybe her money goes straight to her salary. To which they say a very interesting claim, not one I would have come up with. Mistabra d'aviyah. Really, it makes sense. Forget about the pasuk. It makes sense that the father has rights to her salary. Why? They're going to do process of elimination. If you were to say her salary doesn't belong to her father, but wait, the father has rights to send his daughter to the chuppah. We talked about this before, very hard to imagine, but if the daughter doesn't want to get married, he can actually marry her off. Now that means that he can force her, so to speak, to go to her own wedding. Now, what happens when she goes to her own wedding? We all know you get married, you get a day off of work, right? Now, in some places they'll pay you, right? In those days, I'm sure they didn't pay you for your missed day of work. So, if her salary goes to her and not to him, how does he have the rights to send her and make sure she goes to her wedding? He's basically causing her financial loss because she can't work that day. So again, this is if her salary goes to her, then he has no rights to insist that she marry this person, take a day off of work or half day or whatever it might be, and lose out on all those wages. So we're going to have three possible answers to this. Maybe he has to pay her for the wages she lost. It's yes, the father could force her to get married, and yes, her salary goes to her. Again, this is all just theoretical. This is to try to say we can't prove it logically, because if she were to get her own salary, it could be he just has to compensate her. Or inami demasar labalelia, he could marry her off at night. Nobody worked at night in those days. Inami demasar labashabbatot v'yamim tovim, or maybe he got her married on Shabbos and Yantif. Now, this is a little strange. First of all, Yantif emar b'vim simcha b'simcha. You can't get married on Yantif at all. So the commentaries say we must be talking about Tosefet Yom Tov. Some people actually have a different girsa where it says Arvei Shabbatot v'Arvei Yamim Tovim, where generally people didn't work, and therefore on Erev, on the day, right, the day before or the afternoon before, that would be when she would get married, and that way he wouldn't cause her financial loss. Okay, so that's all just theoretical. Okay, but theoretically, there is a way where she could get her salary and he could still enforce the fact that she get married. Ella, so what's the real reason then? Go back to the original pasuk about the Amma. Ella ktana lo tzricha kra. A minor doesn't even need a pasuk. Hashtas the bunim ezabin lama se adam mibai. If he can sell, if he is allowed to sell her to be a maidservant, obviously you don't even need to tell us that the maaseh adeh go to the father. In which case, why do we have this drasha that she's just like the maidservant? Ella ki itzrich kra lanara. The drasha must have been the pasuk, the juxtaposition of the daughter to the maid. To say they're the same must mean specifically a nara. There's no point to give us a drasha about the ktana. It's quite obvious. Again, once the father can sell her to be a maidservant, it's obvious that anything she makes when she's still under his in his domain, obviously it goes to him, and therefore the drasha is for the nara, and that's how we prove it. So we go back to the original and just make it more clear. We started with maybe it's only ktana. In the end, we say it's obvious a ktana, so you wouldn't even need a drasha. The drasha is for the nara. How do we know that he can annul her vows? This we've seen a million times. Right? The pasuk is, right, these are the chukim. Asher tziva Moshe Hashem et Moshe. This is the whole section on annulling vows. And it says, Ben av lebito b'neureha beit avia, when she's a na'ara in her father's house. So obviously means he can annul her vows while she's a ktana and even while she's a na'ara. Umekabelet gita. He can accept her get. We said this is from erusim, from betrothal. Once she's married, she's on her own. Min nalan, how do we get that he can accept her get? The pasuk says, this is the pasuk we quoted the other day. It's about a woman getting married and then she gets divorced and she goes to another man and then she can't go back to the original husband. But yatzav haita puts together, juxtaposes the leaving the marriage and the beginning of the marriage. Itakush yitziah lavaya, we have a hekesh, comparison between the going in and the going out. Just like he gets the money of the kiddushin, he also gets the money. He can also accept the get on her behalf. Now we're going to get into this issue of perot. He doesn't eat the proceeds. If she inherits something from her mother, let's say, okay, a field that was her mother's, she inherits, so the proceeds go to her. So now, and not to the father. Tanu Rabbanan, and we said there's a difference between her father and her husband. Her husband does have rights to the proceeds of her land or anything she might own. Tanu Rabbanan, but now we're going to see a debate about this. Ha'av eino ochel perot b'chayei bito, while she's alive, right? Once she dies, he inherits it. But if while she's still alive, he doesn't get the proceeds, Rabbi Yehuda Omer ha'av ochel perot b'chayei bito. He thinks she does. The father does get. What's the root of the machloket? So obviously Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with our Mishnah. Tanakama saval bishlam abal t'kinula rabbanan peri t'im kemimna below parik. They're giving away something we're going to see later in the daf, which is the reason the husband gets the perot, the proceeds, is so that in the event that she gets taken into captivity, he will redeem her. It's like a tit for tat. Okay, you get this, but in place of that, you're going to redeem me if I get taken into captivity. Now, Tanakama says we understand why the husband needs to get the perot so that he won't not redeem her if she gets taken into captivity. Ela av ma'ikal meimar tibnim mivelo parik. But a father, would there ever be a case where a father's daughter gets taken into captivity and he won't do everything he possibly can to get her out? He doesn't need the payroll in order to redeem his daughter. He's going to redeem his daughter no matter what. For Rabbi Yudah Savar, you can see where this is going probably. No, a father might also not redeem her. Why? He'll say, look, she's got her own savings account. She's been saving up all these proceeds let her pay for her own redemption. Okay. And then he won't want to spend his own money to redeem his own daughter. Okay. Again, you could see fathers like this and fathers like that, right? We all know there's different types of people out there. And also it depends on your financial means. And if she has money, then he'll say, let her take it from her own account. Niseit. So it's an interesting machlok, right? Niseit yeter. Again, all of these sugyot are interesting because they're getting into what do we assume, right? Again, what do we assume, right? What might cause hatred between the father and the daughter? What are we assuming they're going to do anyway, right? Why? It's very interesting, and it gives you a little bit of insight into relationships then, although you see that there's different approaches, and clearly it's not like everybody was the same, which is quite obvious because we know that everybody's not the same, and different people have different relationships with their parents and their children than others. Niseit. Once she gets married, yeter alav habal shu ochel perot, right? The first thing is the husband eats perot and a bunch of other things that we're going to get to. Tanu Rabbanan. So now there's a braita about this, and there's a bit of a debate about what the case is. We're going to go with Rashi. Katav la perot ksut v'kelim. I'm reading in the Gemara, but I'm going to explain it according to Rashi. If the father wrote to the husband during Rashi says we're talking about while they're betrothed only. They haven't gotten married. He writes to her, perot, a bunch of things. He's going to give him the proceeds, ksut, okay, some clothes, v'kelim, and utensils, sheyavo imami beit avia lebeit bala. So he says, right, these are all sorts of things that when she moves in and gets married to you, they will go with her. This is what we call the dowry. So he writes all sorts of things in the dowry, but he writes it during the time of the betrothal. Meta, but then she dies before they actually get married. Lo zacha habal b'dvarim halalu. The husband does not get rights to these. Okay? So now, he has no rights because it was erusin. They were only betrothed, and the husband was promising it really for when they get married. Mishum Rabbanit amru zacha habal b'dvarim halalu. In the name of Rabbanit, they say, no. The father promised them, he gets them. So lema b'plukta to Rabbi Elazar Rabbanan kamiflage. Let's suggest, which is always going to be rejected, but let's suggest that they're having the same debate that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah and the rabbis are having. Ditnan, as it says in the following Mishnah. Nit armala o nit garsha. Now we're going to flip. Our case was, does the husband inherit the wife things that were promised to him during the betrothal in the event that they were never actually married? Now we're going to do the reverse. Does the wife get things from the husband in the event that he promised her things during the betrothal, but didn't actually happen because they never got married? So with the wife, we're talking about payro, ksuk, kelim, all sorts of things that he promises, what we call the dowry. With the husband, it's going to be the ketubot money and the extra ketubot money that he promises her. And then we're going to see, seems to be the same issue here. So if nit armala nit garsha, she was widowed or divorced, beimin anisuin, beimin erusim, whether it's from the marriage or whether it's from the betrothal. So here we have a case of from the betrothal. Govata kol, she gets everything. According to Tanakama, she gets the whole thing. Just like in our case, the opinion that said, Rabbi Natan, he gets everything. If it's from the marriage, obviously she gets everything because that's her ketubah money. That's everything he promised. It's supposed to be in the event of divorce or death from marriage. But mina erusin, if it's from the betrothal only that he died, bitula govamatayim va'almana maneh. The virgin gets 200, the widow gets 100, meaning if she was widowed before the marriage, then she's only going to get 100, but basically that means she's only getting the basic ketubah and nothing of the tosefet, nothing of what he added. Okay, moving out on Amabet, what's the reason? Shelo katav la'el, aminat lekansa. According to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, he only promised her the tosefet because he wanted her to marry him. the engagement is nothing of importance to him. What's important to him is to actually be married to her. And that's why he's promised her all this extra money, because he really wanted to be married to her. And that never happened. So therefore, she doesn't get the extra. So this is very simple. Lamanda Amar Lo Zacha, the Tanakamu says, right, he doesn't get rights to her stuff if she died during the engagement, to her dowry. Ki Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah holds exactly that. Just like he promised her the Tosefet only because he wanted to marry her, right? The father promised the dowry because he wanted the guy to marry his daughter. Umanda Amal Zacha Ki Rabbanan, and the one who says it doesn't make a difference, he promised. Okay, he promised. The father promised, the husband promised, the promise goes through, even though the marriage never happened. To which the Gemara rejects, which we were expecting already, because lema is always let us say, but not actually that it's going to be true. Lo dikule ama Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Really, we could say that everybody agrees with Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and we're going to distinguish between the cases. So first of all, Manda Amar Lo Zacha. So Tanakamu said he doesn't get rights to anything. The father, the husband doesn't get rights to the father's promise if there was no marriage. Well, that's exactly Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Then the cases are perfectly equal. It's the same thing. The husband doesn't get rights to what the father promised if there was never a marriage, and the woman doesn't get rights to what the husband promised, the Tosefet, the extra, unless there was a marriage. But Manda Amar Zacha, how's he going to work with Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah? The one who says, Rabbi Natan, that he does have rights, the husband gets things from the woman, would say the following from the dowry, right, that the father of the woman promised. Ad kan lo ka'amar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah ela midideh ledida. He only said this from her to him, meaning really, from him to her. Midideh is him, from the husband to the wife. Then, if he dies during the betrothal, it doesn't work. Why? Shelo katav la ela almanat lekansa. The whole reason he wrote this to her was in order to marry her. Like we said before, the engagement meant nothing to him. It's only the marriage he wants. He wants to be actually married to her. Aval midida ledideh, but from her to him, meaning her father to him, this dowry he promised, afilu Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah modeh dimishum ichatunehu vaha ichatani lehu. Says something fascinating. He says again, this is a matter of understanding what was going on in those days. The father is very interested in saying my daughter's betrothed to this man. That already is an important step, because it shows he's a person of status, his daughter's betrothed. That's already right. Think about how you feel when your kids are engaged and you're all flying high and saying, wow, I'm on top of the world. That's right. The pride of the father that his daughter's getting married is amazing. And then in those days, particularly, it gave you status, because people were always worried, what if I can't get my daughter betrothed? What's she going to do? So that in and of itself meant a lot. And for that, he was willing to promise all this dowry. So therefore, right. So again, the reason is modeh mishum ichatune. What the father wants is for her to be already committed to someone. That's already worth everything. And she was. So that already was enough for him that he already promised the dowry. But with the husband, he really just wants to be married. It's not right. You think about it. It's funny when you get engaged up and you just want to be married already. You really don't want this engagement stage. Okay. So maybe there's some of it still holds true today. I don't know. Hayav b'mizonoteh. So now the husband, we're going to go back to all these things now that the husband is obligated to the woman. And now we're going to see a bright that says she gives this, and in exchange for that, she gets that. Okay, so Tano Rabbanan. We're going to start with 2, but then we're going to realize there's really 3. Tiknu mizonoteh tacham aseh yadeha. Her food she gets from her husband because she gives him the salary. So she gives salary, he provides food. Ukvurata tachak ktubata. She gets buried by him. He has to pay for a burial in place of the ketubah. What does that mean, the ketubah? The ketubah is promised to the woman. But in the event that she dies first, right? We always talk about the ketubah. He dies first, he gets, right? He has to give her all these things. But if she dies first, then he inherits her ketubah, which means whatever she brought into the marriage, he inherits. Okay. Also what he was committed to give her, he gets. Lefichach bal ochel perot. So by the way, there's a connection here. Her burial, right? When she dies, he's going to get her ketubah money. In place of that, he's supposed to spend the money to bury her. Lefichach, therefore, baal ochel perot. Therefore, the husband gets the proceeds. To which the Gemara says, perot mandachar shmaya. What does that line have anything to do with anything? We weren't even talking about perot in here, if you noticed. To which they say, this bright is missing words, chisur machasre v'hachi katani. And this is how it should read. Tiknu mezonotah tachamasei adeh. Okay, that we already had. In place of her, right? She gives salary, she gets food. Pirkona, this is the extra one we're adding. Pirkona tacha perot. She gives proceeds of any land she has. He gets those while they're married. And in place of that, he needs to redeem her. We saw reference to it before, but we didn't see it inside here. Ukfurata tacha ktubata, and then we have the same one about the burial. He inherits a ktuba. He has to pay the burial fees. Lefichach baal ochel perot, and therefore the husband gets to eat the proceeds. Still, my lefichach, that line still doesn't belong here. But I already said you get perot in place of committing to redeem her. So why did they say my lefichach? Why is that line added? Well, ma'u detema mecha lo nichlinu anu chen anchinu. Maybe he can't actually eat the perot. Maybe he needs to leave them aside for, if we say perot tachat, right, pirkonat tachat perot, maybe it means he puts aside, let's say he's in charge of the field that was hers. He makes sure, right, it produces. He puts all that money in an account, sitting there in the event that she gets taken into captivity, and then he'll use that money. De'im ken mimna v'lo parit, because otherwise maybe he won't redeem her. So kamash malan, because right, where will he get the money? Kamash malan dehadifa. No, really, right? Let's say. So now they're going to say, right? You might have thought maybe he won't redeem her if he has to spend his own money. So therefore, maybe better to leave this money aside so that he'll have money to redeem her. To which the Gemara says, no, kamash malan dehadifa. This comes to teach you, lefichach baal ochel perot, he eats all the proceeds, and that's a better option. And then when it comes time to redeem her, he'll spend his own money. Because zimnin de lo malu. Because what if her proceeds aren't enough? Let's say she doesn't have a lot of land, she doesn't have a lot of proceeds. It was bad years, I don't know. Maybe there won't be enough money that he's going to need to redeem her. Uparik lamidide. Therefore, if there wasn't enough money in the account, he'll just say, oh, there's not enough money in the account, I'm not going to redeem you. So in this case, this is better, because what if, right, every year he takes all the proceeds? Maybe he's probably not doing an accounting exactly how much money came from her stuff, how much money came from my stuff. He just knows that he's getting payroll all the time. And in the event that they're not going to cover the cost of the pidyon, he'll just say, look, she's been giving me payroll. I'll spend my money now to redeem her. Better it come from his money, because if it comes from her money, there might not be enough to cover it. And then he'll say, well, I'm not responsible. We don't want that to happen. Right? Again, hard to understand. The husband will say, what, I don't care about my wife. How? But we know, right? There's people who keep separate bank accounts and keep it all very clear. So here's a way of saying, right, for this issue, we don't want separate bank accounts, because we want him to redeem her no matter what. To which the Gemara says, V'ipochana, why don't we flip this? Now, what are we trying to flip? Well, we have mizonotah tachat masei yadeh. She gives salary, she gets food. She gives, right, we're going to go with one interpretation here. Some people try to mix it up with the burial one, but let's just mix it up with the pirkonat tachat mizonotah. This is the basic, pirkonat tachat perot. So why is it that her salary goes in place of her food, and her proceeds go in place of her being redeemed? To which the Gemara says, right, why don't we say salary goes in place of her being redeemed, and proceeds go in place of her being, in place of her food. So Amar Abai, tiknu matzoi l'matzoi v'she'eno matzoi l'she'eno matzoi. So no, every day she gets a salary, and every day she needs food. Those two go together. And not every day does she have proceeds, and not every day does she need to be redeemed. So it makes more sense to match those up with those. Now we're going to get into another issue about the three things the husband commits to the wife that's connected with our Mishnah. And Amar Rava, we'll just start with this and then I'll give the intro. Hi Tana Savar Mizonot Midoraita. Following Tana holds that Mizonot are by Torah law. Titanya, as it says. Now we're going to see a bunch of different interpretations, and we'll continue with this tomorrow about the three things we talked about the other day. The husband has to give his wife, according to the Torah, she'era, ksuta, v'onata. Right? It comes in that pasuk about the maidservant who gets given to the master or the son as to marry. And if he takes im acheret yikach lo, shmot kaf aleph, chapter 21, verse 10. If he takes another wife in addition to her, he cannot prevent her from getting the Sher Ksut Nona. He's obligated these three things. What are these three things? That's what we're going to learn now. We're going to have two different interpretations, which actually the first two come to the same conclusion, just learn it differently from different words. And then we're going to have more interpretations tomorrow. She'era elu mizonot. So that's how we see it's deoraita, because she'era, that word means mizonot. How do we get that? Okay, the remnant of my nation. Okay, she'er means remnant. What's left of my nation, like she'erit Yaakov, okay, or she'erit Israel. Here's a pasuk from Micha that the people left over, this is what they ate. You see this connection between she'er and food. Ksuta kemashmao, that means clothing, right? Anything provided to protect her body, okay, clothing like that. Onata zo ona ha'amura b'Torah. Okay, onata means this is, okay, we're going to talk about this in a minute, but this is onata amura b'Torah, to which the Gemara says, v'cheinu omer, im ta'anet benotai. This is Lavan says to Yaakov, right? I swear, right? Im ta'anet benotai, do not ta'aneh otam. Okay, we're going to talk about what this is exactly, but what it means clearly is having sexual relations with her. That's one of her rights, okay, her conjugal rights. Now, how we get this from onata, okay? So what is onata? There's two ways of interpreting it. Either onata means a particular time, okay, like a time in the month or a time in the week where there's specified times that he has to commit to her sexual relations, or it means ta'aneh milashon inoi, affliction, and what it means is do not afflict her by not giving her her conjugal rights. Okay, so those are two explanations of how to, but either which way, it means the same thing. Okay, so that's the first. Okay, the second, that's the first interpretation. The second, Rabbi Elazar Omer is going to switch number 1 and number 3. She'era zo ona. She'era, actually, because it's hard to understand what this word she'era means, right? It either means remnant or she'er. We have in the context of, saw this in Yevamot, she'er is close of kin. So it shows a closeness. Zo ona, that's giving her conjugal relations. Okay, right? One should not get close to one's relative, right? She'er b'saro, that means one he's close with. It's a relative, right? Basically, you can't sleep with one of your relatives, but here it means the closeness between them. Ksuta kemashma'o. Okay, that's clothing, that for sure. Onata elu mizonot. How do we get this? Vaya'ancha vayarivecha. This is in Sefer Dvarim when they say, and then God gave them the man. But first, he afflicted them and they were hungry. So here you see, inoi goes with food. So onata is the food. Okay, so we flip 1 and 3 according to this. We'll see other interpretations as we go on. Maybe tomorrow we'll spend a little more time on this ona, little interpretation that's conjugal relations and what exactly this means. Very interesting halacha in general. So we'll leave that for tomorrow's class. Have a great day, everybody. Meet up tomorrow.